Hi, welcome to one of our coffee time chats, a kickback, feet up type of discussion. Today we're joined by Henrik Karlsson from Benchmarking Alliance and Peter Brauer from Get Into More. Today's chat is around the value of hotel benchmarking post-pandemic, and as meetings and events start coming back online, what metrics could you be looking at to maximise your revenue in this valuable area? I hope the discussion is of interest, and please feel free to comment below. We're always interested in your thoughts and views. If you like what we're doing, you know what to do. Please subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you know when we have new content. And finally, please don't forget, click that button for a simple thumbs up. It really helps raise the profile of the channel. And by doing that, you help us to help others. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. Roll the intro. Hey guys, welcome both of you to our what we're calling coffee chat, a bit more kind of a relaxed discussion about some things that might be going on in the industry at the moment. So we've got Henrik from Benchmarking Alliance, we've got Peter from Get Into More. If I could ask you both maybe to just give a quick little intro for those that are watching, and then we'll dive into a topic. We're going to talk a bit about benchmarking. So Henrik, if I can pass over to you first, please.
Yeah, my name is Henrik. I work for Benchmarking Alliance. We are mainly based in the Nordic countries and the Baltics. So we do benchmarking in the hospitality industry in general, but mainly, of course, the hotel industry, because that's where benchmarking is mostly used so far. But we also offer benchmarking for conference, restaurants, spa, etc. So, and conference is maybe the second biggest area that we work with.
That's what we want to dive into a bit later as well on that, isn't it? So that's brilliant. Brilliant. And Peter, over to you.
Yeah, enter me then, because indeed, meeting an event, that's our thing. So I'm from the company called Get Into More. We started the company as a hobby, really, because there was nothing out there to sort of measure get a meeting and events in a data-driven and also Excel-less way. Mm-hmm. So we've set up this tool that gives an overview of everything that has to do with your meeting and events performance at a property. It is directly interfaced with sales and catering systems and gives you fantastic data and fantastic output of your meeting and events performance, but not the benchmarking that you can do. So that's where this one.
Good to have Henrik involved.
Exactly. Voila.
I would say this is a perfect combination.
Exactly. Blowing our own trumpets here, but okay, we do, right?
Because if you don't optimize your request, then there is nothing to benchmark, right?
Correct. Yeah. Very true.
Good point. Let's start off broadly. I mean, no one can hide where we've been for the last 18 months. It's been a challenging time. And one of the topics that was running all the way through that discussion is obviously data, the value of different types of data. Benchmarking, because it's led by data, kind of falls into that. So Henrik, kind of what have you sort of noticed during the pandemic, but maybe more importantly, as we're starting to come out, the impact around benchmarking, engagement with benchmarking? Can you give us kind of some thoughts, observations around that?
Yeah, I mean, when the pandemic hit in March 2020, of course, we were also worried, as I would imagine all companies within the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what that would mean for us. Luckily, we discovered that benchmarking apparently was more important than ever, and so we've been actually doing quite okay during the pandemic. But of course, all our customers, that is the hotels and the conference venues, it's been a struggle, of course.
Yeah.
And everything just went down, and the numbers were red all over, basically.
But you still see, and people were still reporting in the same way that they've always reported, even though they were going through some difficult time. And I guess some hotels were closed as well, I assume.
Yeah, but they did. But most of our clients, they have an automatic feed of numbers to us.
Of course,
So we get a data feed every morning. So
Yeah.
most of them are not doing it manually.
They're
But
not- yeah.
also the ones that are doing it manually continue doing it actually. So they
Yes, I
felt it
think-
was important to still see the numbers in the market, and everybody knew that it was bad, but how bad?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Is it worse for me than for the others, or
Mhm.
so the idea of benchmarking is always important, even if the times are bad.
You were saying,
Makes
Peter.
sense. Yeah, no, true, because indeed it's still, whatever happens out there, it's good to know at least, how many hotels are still reporting, how many, what are the occupancy levels, what are we looking at past month, how were we compared to the whole market, and these things are good indicators of either what's going to happen or as a comparison. So no, I agree. I think the benchmarking in, even in absolute numbers, if it's nothing there, you still have the same KPIs in the end, right?
I think I'm just picking on something you said there, which is like, well, at least we're not doing as bad as the others, or it suddenly switched the mindset. Whereas we're not doing as well as the others. What can we do? It's like, oh well, we're not doing as bad as the other, which is
exactly,
terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, world is upside down, but nevertheless, gives you an indication.
It does, very much so. And so as we're starting to come out, I guess that the kind of the way that we're looking at that benchmarking will probably start to revert back to how we used to utilize it. But one of the areas, and this is what we wanted to touch on, because obviously get into more, you're within that meetings and events and conference. And Henrik, you mentioned it's a big area, and conference probably makes up, as you said, probably number 2 in terms of, you meaning from a benchmarking or revenue perspective. So the value of it is obviously high, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think what we wanted to do was to look at, as that is starting to come out, maybe you could give us a sense first and foremost, if you were to, if you take hotels, everyone's been kind of familiar with benchmarking from a rooms point of view. So, I mean, if you were probably to say what percentage of hotels engage with some kind of benchmarking from a traditional perspective, of a rooms perspective, just broad brush, would you reckon?
Me? Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Henrik. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit tricky, because we have discussed this before here with you, Trevor, and also Pontus from Brauer and Becker, and your colleague
and Nikki. Yeah, that's right.
Nikki from Getting to More. That it's always been a bit, it's never been as interesting to work with revenue management for meeting and events as it has been for hotels.
Yeah,
and I think there are many reasons to that, but I mean, one of them is that we haven't had enough systems. Actually, there hasn't been these optimizing systems like ECRMS or ideas, or that a revenue manager can actually work with. And the other thing is that it's also it's so much more slow than the hotel part. It's the bookings of hotel rooms is so much quicker, and you can get, if you're a 100 rooms hotel, you can get like 10 or 15 bookings the same day. But meeting and events doesn't work like that. It's long term, and what you do now, you will see hopefully in the beginning of next year. So you don't get these quick results either from what you work with. So I think that's why in general it's been left to the meeting and events manager or to somebody else in the hotel to take care of.
Although that has changed quite differently now as well, over this last minute request that, like you said before, the bigger ones came in 4 or 5 months ahead. Now we're selling different sort of meetings, right? So it's smaller meetings, but with a lead time that is maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 days, instead of meetings of 50 to 100 persons for say 2 or 3 months out. And even these bigger ones are coming on a shorter note. So I think the number of requests are actually increasing currently. It's because we're coming out of this pandemic, and people want to sit together again. So I believe that we are sort of forced to think differently now, because the revenues that we used to have, coming in slowly, are coming in now rapidly in a way for meeting and events. So even bigger events, sometimes they would like, oh, next week we want to do 150, 200 people. We've heard that now, in Berlin and Amsterdam and Brussels, that we have bigger events. People want to gather again, and it has to happen fast and quick. So I think that's also a change.
So does that start to move back to your point, Henrik, about obviously this being traditionally, as it was, longer term for the bigger events and conferences, whereas, as you say, the rooms, it was so dynamic, it's moving hourly, minute by minute. So the amount of information, the amount of that they can pass from a benchmarking point of view, suddenly that has quite an importance when you're looking at those numbers, whereas maybe it wasn't perceived as much within the meetings and events because it seemed a little bit slower. But with the shift and this more dynamic approach and the current need, and as you were saying, Peter, the trend of booking these things quicker, then suddenly the information that we're getting there could be of much greater value than it was probably perceived before. Would that be fair? Henrik, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's also about pricing, because a hotel room, correct, you can change the price of a hotel room up to 10 times during one day, but you don't do that in the meeting and events industry, or in the meeting and for the requests, conference requests, because it's too difficult. There are no systems to support that, and that's not how you work with it. But then, of course, there is something else that is maybe even more important than changing the rates. It's actually utilizing your space, and to fill your house in the best possible way. To fill your conference rooms with delegates and make sure that no rooms are empty, more or less.
No, that makes sense.
And that is, if you want to be successful in that work is something totally different than being a rooms revenue manager.
Are you seeing this, Peter?
Yeah, I agree, and I think also we're coming out of this pandemic, and now we're getting these requests and we're overexcited, get it in, and then we're blocking and we're blocking. First come, first serve, and then we have to get into the mode again, as before, that we actually start, even yielding what we're doing already with the rooms. I think depending on your destination, for some weeks or some months, it can be done with the meeting rooms as well again, because the demand is increasing in a very positive sense. And on top of that, I think there is a very willingness to pay. I'm not saying that they would spend for whatever. I think, but we can be a bit more aggressive on rates as even before, because these square meters that we are selling are square meters that are of much interest to a lot of companies that want to have meetings outside of their traditional own offices for the moment, and then have inspirational whatever that they want to have, but it's something that they're willing to pay for as well.
Yeah, and I think, Henrik, you made a point there about I guess you made a point around the pricing piece, and then Peter, you mentioned there about the yielding element that we're starting to see. I mean, one of the things from a benchmarking point of view, it always comes back to metrics, and there's some hard and fast metrics that exist when you're looking at rooms, even simple from an ADR or RevPAR, and now we've got TrevPAR and GoPAR and whatever PAR you want on there. I mean, from a you are right in the conference, meetings, and event space. Is there an industry defined metric? I guess you have a metric that obviously you are getting hotels to report to. Is there an industry defined metric, or is there just a metric that you use yourself from a reporting point of view? Or maybe they're one and the same. Maybe you're defining the metric.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I don't know if I dare to say that revenue per square meter is an industry-defined metric, but I think I actually dare to say it, because I think that's being more and more known, now, and it's more and more people are talking about revenue per square meter, and they understand that is the ultimate KPI for a conference venue or for your conference department.
I think there's a lot of common ground to be found for revenue per square meter. It's something that is, I wouldn't say super easy to calculate, but it makes sense how to calculate if you put the right parameters in place. And it's very easy to understand, because there's other parameters. I mean, there's so many we can come up with. There's a list. If you ask, I think, a couple of hotels or venue places, like what would be what would you think of? There's a bunch that will say, I want occupancy per square meter, or like the cost per square meter, whatever, or meeting room occupancy. There's a lot of things that you can benchmark yourself with. But ultimately, I agree with Henrik. Revenue is revenue, right? Money is money, and the square meters are fixed in a way. I mean, there's no debate.
That's the point, isn't it? You've got to have fixed metrics in a sense. If you're going to start off with a core metric, you need to have it as simple and as less variable or unvariable as possible, isn't it?
Just as we do with the revenue in hotels, we divide it with available rooms. So here we have to divide it in some other availability that we have. And what is that? Well, that is space, and space is counted in square meters. So that's where we are.
And sorry, Peter, go.
Yeah, and also, I mean, in a way, like hotels, with these square meters, it's in a way it's real estate, right? If it's a hotel room or a venue, it's real estate in any form, and the value of real estate is always sort of calculated by the square meters, right? If you buy a house or anything else, it's the square meters that count. So why not do that with an event, right? Or with a meeting space? It's the same story.
Yeah. Henrik, from your perspective, looking at hotels that you work with that have conference, meeting and event space, I guess all of those are feeding you information about their rooms because you're working with them as clients.
Yeah.
Just looking at the ones with meeting as an event space, have you got them all on board to be reporting their meeting and event revenue per square meter as well, or is that still a bit of an uphill battle?
We're still working on that. Far from all of them are using the conference trends as our tool is called.
Okay.
So the answer is no, not all of
them. And Peter, I mean, you're obviously seeing it from a different side of the equation, but hotels that you're working with from a Get Into More, I assume this is probably also conversations that you're having about how they are evaluating a key performance metric. Are you seeing a more than an appreciation for, yes, that makes sense, but also, how do we kind of engage with this?
Yeah, I think the good thing is that within the tool we have these KPI already there, revenue per square meter, so we can it's there, it's at least it's visible for our users, and there's a lot of willingness of our users to have a benchmarking with others as well. And you talk to all of them and they say yes, but individually, in the end, there's no seeing through to it when sharing the data, which we so easily do about the rooms, because but what if they calculate it differently? So. And that is a bit of a pity, because in a way, we also don't know all the time if the room revenue is calculated correctly. So there comes a time you just have to get started with it, and the more, like you said, you have to at least have some of them that start with it, the better it is. And if I think there is they are all convinced about the parameter about revenue per square meter. And I think now the next step is also to report this and get them going with it. And I asked also a couple of hotels, like, is it the cost of participating that is the issue? And I said, no, it's more of another thing to do. Whereas actually, it's not that difficult to do, right? It's just the square meters are there in the tool, and then you just put in the revenues, and that's it.
I guess that leads me to a question I wanted to ask: is how much you said earlier, Henrik? A lot of them don't report it manually; they just have a feed. So there's a bit of technology in there that is pushing that information to you. So I guess even if there is the buy-in to the value of the metric, they don't. If we're back to the point that you said there, Peter, about it's just time. I guess if they don't have a solution that calculates it and can provide that information to a benchmarking organization, then it just becomes an internal calculation, which could be a value, but it's going to be hard to get it in a benchmarking perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to compare it to the market. I mean, you know what you did in your own venue, but was that good enough? I mean, how is the market doing in general? What if the market is increasing 15% and you only 5%?
Yeah,
you shouldn't be happy with only those 5%. Then you actually lost 10%. And that's and sometimes it also feels like some venues are a little bit afraid of the truth.
Really, that's interesting.
It's like an ostrich, like I don't want to. I don't want to know.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know how badly I might be doing compared to the others.
But it's true. It is a sort of a threshold they have to pass in order to, and I think what would be interesting, if they would have market insights, for the whole market. I think choosing your competitors is always it's never easy, right? Even if you're like in with the hotels, there's so many indicators and there's so many opinions about who's my main competitor. And I think that is also the challenge, I think, with venues and meeting and events. Who is our competitor, right? And do we want to have that benchmark with that super deluxe hotel, a couple of blocks away from us with a super product? On the other hand, you don't have to be the best, right? I mean, if you say I'm happy with an index of 80 versus 100, that's my position, fine. And if next month you're 85, you've done something better, right? So that's.
But if you drop to 65, you know that you did something wrong.
Exactly.
It's like you want to know that you're keeping your position. Exactly. And the best thing would be if you are also increasing, but at least keep your position.
Yeah. And I think what I believe as well when it comes to benchmarking, I think, and even with if it rooms or is it meeting and events, I think that the best way to look at it is also on a broader scale. If you compare yourself, the revenue per square meter, with all the venues in your city, because we don't know who they asked requests for, right? I mean, if a venue organizer has made an inquiry, they send it to 40 hotels, maybe, or 20 or 5, we don't know. But you're always in competition with a lot of other properties, and therefore, I think the threshold gets lower when you have a broad variance of competitors to compare yourself with.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I also encourage the venues to look at more like market data. I mean, we have almost 100 venues in Sweden reporting. So of course you don't have to look at all those 100, but at least make it like 10 or 20 or something. Then you get the broader picture.
Yeah, because you're not competing only with Stockholm. You could be competing with a hotel or a venue, I don't know where, somewhere in Sweden. So I think that makes more sense as well. No, definitely.
Yeah. It's not so geographically fixed in the meeting and events industry as it is in hotels. Because if you go to a hotel, you go to stay in the hotel because you want to go to that special area or that city or so. But like a conference request, it can be sent to many different cities because it doesn't really matter where you go. You just want the right venue with the right.
That's the key thing, isn't it? It's you're looking at it. Maybe price is a greater determining factor. Could be argued than because if you want to go somewhere that you haven't visited before, you'll probably justify maybe spending a little bit more.
Yeah.
If you're hosting an event, then
Mhm.
sometimes the decision making potentially has a greater sway on the financial aspect than the location, because unless you need to tie that location in to the event, as you said, Henrik, you could have it in any city. You know, if I'm looking in the UK, you could have an event in multiple cities. It doesn't have to be in London, which is going to be one of the most expensive places to hold an event. So unless it's necessity for a travel point of view, then your event could be anywhere. So you're going to be weighing up venue, you're going to be weighing up size, you're going to be weighing up price, aren't you? So there's a number of other factors that come into it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You just touched on a couple of others. I mean, listening to you, I mean, you spoke about occupancy per square meter. I mean, I guess delegate per square meter, revenue. I mean, you've got revenue per square meter. I guess then you could be breaking out revenue per delegate. I mean, they all seem logical, but they all seem to add a degree of greater variability in there that I feel you could get a bit of paralysis by analysis before you've even nailed down one metric. What's your views on that side?
Yeah, I agree. I think you get lost in the woods with these different delegates, or because then you would have to. I mean, if you want to do it properly, whatever you book into your system, are you going to stand next to the door and count them all? I mean, those things are just hazards waiting to happen. So I think whatever has a probability that it isn't correct, we should exclude as much as possible. At the end of the day, whatever is posted in your revenues, that's money in the bank. So to say, it's the same with the room revenue. It's what is posted at the end of the day is the revenues that you get in there. And on the other hand as well, do we care about how many people actually stay in the meeting room? If they're willing to pay £1,000 or €1,000 for a meeting room and one person stays in that, good for me. I mean, less cost and and good revenues. Now, it doesn't really matter that much. I mean, for that sake. And I also wonder, what would you do with it? I mean, if you know that you had 200 people in that meeting room, or, I mean, internally, yes, but from a benchmarking perspective, would that matter to you? Do you think like, oh, that would be interesting. I want to also have these 200 people. No, I want to have that £40,000, euro, whatever that we're looking at.
We use it as an additional information, I would say, because revenue per square meter is on top, definitely. That's the most important. But if you see that you are losing revenue per square meter from one year to another, you also maybe want to dig a little bit deeper into that and see what actually happened. Why did I lose? Was it because I had less bookings and less people coming here, or was it because prices went down, or my revenue per delegate went down? So that's why we also, or the venues report delegates.
Okay.
So we calculate revenue per delegate and delegates per square meter, because then you can at least see, okay, we lost 5% versus last year. That was because we lost number of delegates 3%, and the other 2% was price or revenue per delegate. So it gives you some sort of more information that just your revenue per square meter went down.
I've got you. So it's kind of another level of refinement to dig into as another metric to kind of flag.
Just so you know, I mean, what should we aim for here? We still have, if you still have the same amount of people in your venue and you're utilizing your conference rooms in the exact same way as last year, but you are decreasing, then it is revenue per delegate, and then you might have to look into how are we selling our events, or maybe even the prices. So it's just to give some direction where to go and where to start working.
I think an extra layer is always interesting, because at least within the layers you can compare. If you have one point to start with, and then, because what I was wondering, and this is maybe off topic and something else, but no, because what we are looking at with hotels, we're trying to give an experience, no matter what. If it's a hotel room or a meeting, it doesn't matter. And what is the strength of quite a lot of hotels, and especially when we look at the OTAs, is these review scores, right? I mean, if we try and book somewhere, or we're definitely going to look at review scores, and that is something when we look at benchmarking, that we take more and more into consideration as well. When we don't only look at the rate or your concept, and there with meeting and events, and I know we haven't even started about it, but I think also there, but a benchmark would really be, for me, is also a review score.
So a review of the meeting and event space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because we say, okay, the hotel has a 9.0 on booking.com for the hotel room, so let's go there. That could be an indicator that the meeting rooms are great as well. But
Often
we don't
not,
have
no.
or maybe but that is, I'm not sure even if that exists, Henrik or Trevor, but I think on the long run that would be interesting also to have. I mean, you can look at TripAdvisor and find some stuff if you wanted to, but not really dedicated to an event. I mean,
yeah.
Do you know of anything, Henrik?
Not in meeting and events actually, but in the hotel NPS. We do actually benchmark for some hotels that also work with Loopon. So they feed for hotels that work with us and with Loopon. Loopon feeds the NPS to us, so they can also get a benchmark on that.
That's interesting.
But not for meeting and events yet. I think in general it's difficult, because who are you asking in meeting and events? Are you asking the conference guests or the conference organizers?
In principle, I would say it's the same as in hotels. The people that are staying and enjoying the meeting, right? That's
very difficult to get get track of, to keep track on them, because you don't have their email addresses and you don't have any contact information to them. So it's almost impossible for the venue to contact the guests afterwards. So that's the main challenge.
Yeah.
Unless we get a company out there who just provides something like that, with an app, and then there you go. They just have to download the app, or when they're at the venue,
Peter,
click on something.
Peter,
stop.
Be quiet, right? You're giving away an idea. You're just you're now putting the business.
But you can edit this, right? You can take this out.
You just thrown an idea out there.
Oh Lord, what have I done? No, it was something that we talked about last week. Just we had the future of meeting and events. We had some discussions in Holland with some clients and some venue organizers, and that just came up, and it was true. I thought it's a valid point. Anyway, I know it's off topic and it's not a KPI, but we dare to dream.
Yeah, but I think what it does indicate within topic is that an evolution of thinking of other metrics that feed into to help us to evaluate above and beyond, in the same way that we've moved beyond ADR into a whole level of different acronyms now. I guess that's the same thing. If you can kind of start with revenue square meter to at least give you a baseline that you are then able to compare on a like-for-like basis, then what you do below that with the delegate per square meter or the revenue per delegate, or if you layer in a review element, that just, at least it's starting to bring the thought process around revenue managing your meetings and events to a more comparable level. And I think part of it is also just, I'm kind of conscious of your time. It's meant to be a short kind of chat, but it's quite good when it goes on a bit longer, because it means there's something interesting. But I think what the pandemic has potentially done, and I always struggle to get my head around the fact that everything else was called ancillary revenue. It's like, I've never understood, I don't think you have other manufacturing companies that started off with one product. I'm sure Procter & Gamble don't call everything else apart from their core product an ancillary product. It is just a revenue stream. And I think if we can move beyond room revenue and ancillary revenue and actually just say, it's just revenue and what are the different revenue streams, then I think you start to make a big step forward.
Very valid
And
point.
how do we work with each and every one of those revenue streams to be able to optimize them? That's the whole thing. You know? But as you say, Peter, I think it's starting to change now as well. I think revenue managers in general are looking more into, first of all, they're looking more into total revenue and total profit of the hotel. Which then actually forces them into looking at meeting and events and food and beverage and these areas. So
I think these revenue silos, we're finally getting, we're breaking them because we have the tools are better, the data is better, and it's and we've all become smarter. So, but that's a good evolution. Now we just have to get the right KPIs, right?
Yeah. And the right solutions on board to be able to produce those KPIs. Because if you haven't got the technology solution to pull in that information, do the calculation, and feed it out somewhere, well, if you're going to go back to an Excel spreadsheet or relying on somebody doing it manually, it's not really going to happen.
And now is the perfect time to start as well, because now we see meeting and events revenue picking up in all the markets that we measure. And when I talk to the venues, they have a lot to do with all the requests coming in. So the meeting and events market is picking up again finally, and now it's a perfect time to get started with measuring and optimizing your requests, and to stay on top of it.
Yeah, and also automating, because like you said, they're getting busier and busier, but they're still, there's also challenges with staffing. And the moment that you have a part of it automated so that you don't have to calculate certain things in Excels or make reports, you can focus on converting business. So I think the automation, and that has been in something through the pandemic, that we could actually see that you don't have to work from the property constantly, that you can have some Zoom calls before starting, and that there is an efficiency and some tech things in there that we as an industry within the hospitality, it's not that we're the dinosaurs, but we are super fast in adapting to guest needs, but to trends within our industry, we always say like, maybe next year, or that's not about, let's first get some China in instead of buying some new tech apps or whatever it is.
Let's change our chairs.
Yeah. No, seriously, we need some new drapes. Yeah, okay, that costs like 100,000 then, and then you say, well, this tool or this application costs like 10% of the whole thing. You go like, oh, really? I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, so I think that also helps. It has helped. I think that the pandemic has helped us moving or opening our eyes for tech solutions, for sure.
Yeah. Now is the perfect time to be a little bit more business minded.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
We're getting there.
We're getting there, slowly but surely. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me for a coffee chat. It was great to have you. Nice to have a kind of just a relaxed bounce around benchmarking, but I think it definitely seems the right time to be taking this a little bit more seriously, and maybe if anything comes out of the pandemic, as you say, it'll be breaking down those silos, looking at technology to help, becoming a little bit more commercial, and stop looking at everything outside of rooms as ancillary revenue, and actually start looking at how you can maximize every revenue stream. That would be a nice starting point.
Yeah, thank you.
Good
Always
stuff, guys.
A pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. Take care. Well, I hope that conversation was of interest, and thanks again to Henrik and Peter for joining us. If you have any thoughts or views on this discussion, please feel free to reach out. We value your input, and we're happy to follow up with our guests. And if there are any topics you would be particularly interested in, or specific guests you would like to hear from, again, do let us know in the comments below. If you like the discussion, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Just a simple click on that button. It really helps raise the profile of the channel, and in this way you can help us to help others. If you're interested in our recent videos, here is our Expert Insights playlist, and here is the button if you would like to subscribe, so don't miss out on our future videos. Did I say it really helps us out if you like or subscribe? I think I did. Anyway, thanks again for watching.